Ohio, the industrial heart of America, was once a symbol of strength and prosperity. It was a place where fiery steel mills and bustling cities built the American dream with sweat and diligence. But today, these streets tell a different story. The factories are now silent, and the dream of old has become shattered. Instead, a quiet tragedy is unfolding, taking root in every corner of a state that was once a foundation of prosperity. The homelessness crisis here is not like in the coastal cities. It's personal, often invisible, and haunts the lonely roads and forgotten corners. This is a slow-motion tragedy, a symptom of a system that has betrayed its own people. The Cracked Mirror, a narrative of homelessness in Ohio. In the heart of America, nestled between the Great Lakes and the Appalachian Mountains, lies a state that was once a testament to the nation's industrial might. Ohio. Its name alone evokes images of steel mills that once blazed against the twilight sky, of rubber factories that hummed with 1,000 hands, of bustling towns where a handshake was a contract and a good day's work earned a man his home. These were the sinews of a nation, the places where the American dream was not a distant ideal, but a tangible, sweat-drenched reality. Cleveland, a city forged in fire and steel. Akron, the rubber capital of the world. Toledo, a gateway to the Midwest. Their names were synonymous with progress, with a future built on grit and perseverance. But time, the most unforgiving of historians, has etched a different story into the landscape of Ohio. Today, the steel mills are silent skeletons against a gray sky. The factories are cavernous mausoleums of a bygone era, and the towns that once thrummed with life now bear witness to a profound and silent decay. The very streets that once bustled with the footsteps of workers now echo with a different rhythm, the quiet shuffle of the dispossessed, the weary gait of those with nowhere to go. This is a story rarely told, a crisis often overlooked, but it is a crisis simmering in the heart of the heartland. This is a crisis of homelessness, and it is a symptom of something far deeper than personal misfortune. It is a cracked mirror reflecting the hidden wounds of a nation, a stark, painful reminder that the issue of homeless in America is not confined to the coasts. The national narrative of homelessness is often a tale of two cities, the sun-drenched, palm-lined streets of Los Angeles and the freezing, subway-shadowed alleys of New York. The camera's lens focuses on these spectacles, creating a powerful, albeit incomplete, image of the crisis. But to truly understand the soul of this problem, one must look inward toward the quiet places where the numbers are smaller but the impact is no less devastating. One must travel to Ohio, a state whose very existence embodies the post-industrial struggle. Here, homelessness is not always visible. It is a ghost haunting the corridors of a forgotten past, a quiet desperation that lives in the shadows of a once proud present. It is the story of a system that has failed its people, a life no longer deemed worthy of inclusion, a slow-motion tragedy playing out in the very soul of the country. The big picture, the pain of homelessness in urban and rural areas. In the sprawling urban centers of Ohio, the crisis is hard to ignore, even when the rest of the world tries to look away. In Cleveland, for example, the numbers are not just statistics. They are a living, breathing reality. On any given night, more than 30 individuals are without a home. Some find a measure of safety in the temporary embrace of a shelter, a fragile barrier against the night's cold. But for countless others, the home is a makeshift encampment woven from tarps and discarded pallets, huddling along the unforgiving concrete banks of a freeway or under the cold, metallic belly of a bridge. These are not places of leisure, they are fortified islands of survival, where every day is a battle against the elements and every night is a vigil against the unknown. Move south to Columbus, and the story takes a more urgent turn. The city's homeless population has swelled by over 20% in just a few short years, an undeniable surge that can no longer be swept under the rug of political convenience. This is not a gradual trend, it is a tidal wave. And the city's resources, its shelters, its outreach programs, its meager budget, are drowning beneath the force of it. In Toledo, Dayton, and Akron, the numbers may seem less dramatic on a spreadsheet, but for the people living them, they are a universe of pain. Behind every cold number is a warm, fragile name. A mother forced to choose between a week's worth of groceries and a roof over her child's head. a veteran with a faded service ribbon on a tattered jacket, a young man who just lost the only job he could find. The choice is a harsh one, and the path it leads to is often the unforgiving street. But to only focus on the cities is to miss the most insidious face of the crisis, the hidden homeless of rural Ohio. Here, there are no bustling soup kitchens or visible tent cities on the main thoroughfare. The suffering is not on display. Instead, it is tucked away in the hollows and valleys of Appalachia, in the forgotten farming suburbs of Jackson, in the quiet, unassuming villages of Hocking County. Here, homelessness wears a different disguise. It is a family of three, sleeping in a rusted-out station wagon behind a gas station, a rotating cast of relatives, taking in a displaced cousin for a few weeks at a time, a makeshift shelter carved out of the shell of an abandoned warehouse. These are the hidden homeless, a population undocumented and unseen, but suffering in a silence far louder than the city's clamor. The difference between urban and rural homelessness is not just a matter of geography. It is a matter of access and perception. In the city, limited as they may be, there are at least shelters, emergency services, and the possibility of a hot meal. In the countryside, these resources can be dozens of miles away, and transportation is often a luxury they cannot afford. The stigma is also far more intense. In a small town where everyone knows everyone, the shame of being homeless is a heavy cloak to wear. It is a feeling of being exposed and judged, a quiet condemnation that can drive a person to greater and greater lengths to hide their plight. Many of these people are not unemployed. They are the waiters who serve you coffee, the day laborers who fix your yard, the drivers who deliver your packages. They are all around us, serving us, but they have nowhere to go when the sun sets. This is Ohio's homeless map, a landscape of heartbreak from east to west, a poignant reminder of the pervasive and often invisible nature of homeless in America. The walls fall, the root cause of the crisis. A crisis of this magnitude does not happen by accident. Homelessness in Ohio is not the result of a sudden failure of personal character. It is the direct consequence of decades of systemic failure, a slow, deliberate decay that began with the rust and the rustle of a changing world. To understand it, we must rewind the clock to the 1980s, an era when Ohio was the epitome of a working class state. The air was thick with the scent of industry. Youngstown steel mills roared to life, churning out the backbone of a nation. In Lordstown, the General Motors plant buzzed with the promise of mobility. And in Akron, the rubber industry hummed with the rhythm of prosperity. Thousands of jobs, stable wages, and a clear path to homeownership. This was the lifeblood of Ohio. But then came the storm. Globalization, automation, and deregulation swept across the country like a cold front, leaving a trail of economic devastation in its wake. The factory gates were chained shut. The final shift whistle blew, and thousands of men and women walked away from the only life they had ever known. These were not just jobs lost. They were entire communities gutted. The economic hubs became ghost towns. The working class families became rows of people struggling to survive. It was not a sudden collapse, but a slow, agonizing suffocation, a policy of neglect allowed to fester over a generation. As the jobs disappeared, a vicious cycle began. The ability to pay rent vanished with them. Yet, as the incomes of the working class stagnated, the cost of living continued its relentless climb. Housing prices soared, and the gaping maw of inequality widened. The numbers are staggering in their cold-hearted cruelty. In the last 5 years alone, the average rent in Ohio has increased by more than 20%, while the minimum wage has barely moved. The math is simple and tragic. A person working a full-time job at the current minimum wage cannot afford a one-bedroom apartment in nearly all of Ohio's major cities. This is not some abstract economic theory. It is the raw, visceral reality of a system that has made survival a luxury. When people find themselves on the precipice, they turn to the systems that are supposed to catch them. Social assistance, housing subsidies, and emergency services, these are the safety nets. But in Ohio, those nets are frayed and full of holes. The waiting list for subsidized housing in Cleveland can stretch for 3 to 5 years, a lifetime of uncertainty for a family on the brink. The shelters in Columbus are perpetually overcrowded, forced to turn away desperate individuals every single night. The mental health services, a lifeline for so many who find themselves on the streets, have been significantly underfunded and systematically defanged over the last 2 decades. The people turn for help only to find the door locked. Adding insult to injury is the criminalization of poverty. In a twisted irony, many Ohio cities have laws that punish people for the very act of being homeless. Sleeping in public, setting up a tent, or simply asking for help can result in tickets, fines, and even jail time. Instead of receiving a helping hand, they are given a criminal record, an insurmountable obstacle that makes finding work and housing even more impossible. This is the ultimate betrayal, punishing a person for their suffering. The political will to address this crisis is a mirage, a fleeting promise made on the campaign trail and forgotten in the halls of power. Homelessness is deemed too complex, too politically unpopular, with no quick fixes or easy electoral points to be won. And so, the solutions offered are not solutions at all. They are mere bandages on a gaping wound. The clearing of a tent city before the winter, the forced eviction of a squatting community, the construction of a temporary shelter just long enough to appease the public. These are not solutions. They are simply the act of pruning branches while the root of the problem, the rot of neglect and inequality, continues to grow deeper. This is a story of homeless in America where the system is the greatest enemy. Invisible pains and the bright candlelight of kindness. When we think of homelessness, we often conjure images of the physical, the cardboard sign, the tattered blanket, the weary expression. But the true wound is not always visible. It is a deep, psychological devastation that erodes the soul. When a person loses their home, they lose more than a roof. They lose their sense of security, the fragile foundation upon which their identity is built. They lose their self-esteem, the belief that they are worthy of a place in the world. They lose the simple, profound peace of mind that comes from knowing where you will sleep tonight. In Cleveland, a woman named Grace lives in a small tent hidden behind a convenience store. She has been on the streets for so long that the lines of her past have blurred. When asked what she misses most, she doesn't mention a home or money. She says, "I just miss someone calling my name." It is a heartbreaking admission of a deeper truth. After a certain amount of time on the streets, a person is no longer a human being. They are simply homeless, an anonymous face in a crowd that has forgotten how to care. The loss of identity is a poison, a slow-acting venom that saps the will to live. The children of this crisis bear their own invisible wounds. They are the shadows on the playground, the kids who frequently change schools, falling behind in their studies and feeling utterly alienated from their peers. Within them, a profound fear takes root, a sense that the world cannot be trusted, that stability is a myth. This trauma follows them into adulthood, a ghost in their own lives manifesting as anxiety, depression, and a crushing sense of worthlessness. For the adults, the constant pressure of street life is a mental crucible. Many turn to addiction not out of choice, but as an escape from the relentless cycle of pain. To be human, to maintain a sense of dignity and sanity in a world that forces you to watch your back while you sleep and hide while you eat, feels like a struggle too great to bear. But what hurts more than anything is the quiet condemnation of society. The phrase, "it's your own fault," echoes in the media, in internet comments, in the casual conversations of a cafe. It is a phrase that drives the knife of shame deeper, a final, cruel act of victim blaming that freezes not just the body, but the heart. And it is in this darkness, this profound sense of isolation and neglect, that the true heroes of this story emerge. These are not politicians or philanthropists with grand visions. These are the small, flickering candles in the overwhelming darkness. They are the volunteers, the social workers, the shelter staff, and the street activists, ordinary people who refuse to turn a blind eye. There is Linda, a social worker in Columbus who has spent 12 years in an emergency shelter. Every morning, she greets people arriving with nothing but exhaustion and fear. Her job, she says, isn't just to find them a bed, it's to listen. Because for many, She is the first person who has truly heard their story in a very long time. And there is Marcus, a man who knows the streets better than anyone because he used to live on them. He survived freezing winters and the hunger of an empty stomach. Now, he volunteers at a tiny house community in Dayton, helping others find a way out. If I can get back on my feet, he says, they can too, but they need someone to believe in them before they can believe in themselves. These individuals work with minimal resources, fighting not just against poverty, but against the tide of public indifference. They face scorn and sometimes even threats because their compassion is mistaken for enabling. Yet, they persist, proving that even when the system fails, human beings can still save each other. The crisis of homeless in America is a test of our collective soul. Rising from crisis. Community solutions. Amidst the darkness of Ohio's homelessness crisis, a small but powerful light shines forth. It does not emanate from the grand halls of government, but from the simple, caring hands of citizens who have grown tired of waiting for the system to work. They have decided to take matters into their own hands, proving that solutions don't always require grand political gestures, they just require compassion and resolve. In Columbus, a group of residents is building a tiny house village, a community of small, simple structures, each no larger than a small studio. Within these modest walls, individuals are finding more than just shelter. They are finding dignity, safety, and a sense of belonging. We're not just giving them a house, a manager of the projects explains. We're giving them a chance to feel like they belong again. This model of community-based, compassionate housing has begun to spread to other cities like Dayton and Akron. It is a testament to the idea that effective solutions can be simple, affordable, and built on the foundation of human connection. In Cleveland, a job training program based in a shelter is changing lives. It offers real, marketable skills in areas like carpentry, culinary arts, and urban farming. The participants are not just learning, they are being paid for their time, earning an immediate income, and, more importantly, rebuilding their self-confidence. A mentor at the program scoffs at the idea of the lazy homeless, saying, "Here, I see them arriving early and leaving late. They just needed a chance." In Toledo, a group of dedicated volunteers has built a mobile library, a quiet revolution on wheels for the homeless. Books have become an unexpected lifeline, an escape from the crushing loneliness of the streets. People read by the glow of streetlights, their minds traveling to new worlds, even as the hard, cold ground remains beneath their feet. Some learn new languages, others wrote poetry. In the face of overwhelming adversity, the human spirit still sought to grow. These grassroots innovations, born not from technological miracles, but from the simple act of helping a neighbor, are not going to solve the entire crisis overnight. But for one person to get off the street, for one family to have a place to eat a meal together again, for one child to learn without fear, that is a world-changing event. They are a powerful, undeniable proof that even when the political machinery fails, the human heart can still find a way to save itself. It is a ray of hope that the crisis of homeless in America can be met with empathy and action, not just despair. The broken mirror, a call to conscience. Behind every tent on a city corner and every rusted-out car converted into a bed, there stands an invisible wall, far more solid than any brick and mortar. This is the political wall, built from the unkept promises of campaign seasons and the hollow debates of legislative chambers. It is a wall constructed from the choices that prioritize new stadiums and city parks over housing assistance and shelter budgets. It is a wall that stands between a mother and her children sleeping in a car and the billions of dollars spent on highways that only the house can drive. Politicians speak of family values and individual responsibility, yet they refuse to support policies that would save families from the streets. They turn a blind eye when the very system they oversee fails to provide access to jobs, mental health care, or even the basic right to shelter. In Ohio, the homeless crisis is not just about poverty, it is about priorities. As long as those in power refuse to see this as an emergency, the tents will continue to grow, the streets will continue to be a home, and the most vulnerable citizens will continue to be forgotten by their own country. The truth of homeless in America is a test of our national morality. Ohio, once the heartland of American industry and dreams, is now a mirror. a cracked and unflattering mirror that reflects the moral fragility of a nation. When we see a person sleeping on the sidewalk, the question is not what's wrong with them, but rather what's wrong with us. It is a question that challenges our collective conscience, our sense of shared responsibility, and our ability to see our fellow human beings not as a problem to be solved, but as a part of ourselves. This crisis is not insurmountable. It is a human-made problem, and therefore, it has a human-made solution. But to find that solution, we must first truly try. The answer to America's future may not lie in the towering skyscrapers of Washington, but in the quiet, compassionate streets of Ohio, in the hands of the volunteers, the kindness of a stranger, and the simple, undeniable truth that the most humane thing we can do is to leave no one behind.